Video game balance is hard, and in hero shooters and games which are live service, metas will naturally form and balancing issues will take place. And today I just like to talk about one specific one that is currently facing paladins at the moment, and that is the tank problem. Now, what do we mean when we say paladins has a tank problem? So in the game, there are certain point tanks in paladins. We have some specific point tanks, we have some true point tanks, and we have some ones that you can kind of play on point. Now, not all tanks are busted, and when I'm saying that tank problem, when I say tank problem, I'm not meaning that tank is an OP role. In fact, I'd say tank is generally not particularly strong. It's actually support that makes tank as impactful as it is at the moment, but that's a discussion for another video. Paladins has an issue with point tanks at the moment. So let's just first establish what those point tanks are. So these are your 5 point tanks, which play as true point tanks at the moment. So you have Nando, Nyx, Barik, Inara, and Terminus. And Terminus is a bit of a weird one because no one knows how to play him very well, except for the few people that do. But before Nyx was released, this was our sort of holy trinity, because Terminus hadn't been buffed for ages, he'd been gutted, and he was very bad. And you had these 3 tanks basically as point. You had Nara, who was good into Barik because you would play Cripple, or you just play normal Obelisk and you would just deny his movement and you destroy his turrets and you just kill him. Barik was good into Nando because you'd build the Wrecker on the Barik and you had a high DPS output and he couldn't Cauterize you as effectively because you could shield dance. And he couldn't Cauterize you as effectively because you could shield dance. Nando was good into Nara because he had steady application of Cauterize, and Nara's DPS isn't very effective at breaking his shield down because she would need to build other items. And Terminus, like I said, was just crying in a corner. But once you add Nyx, there is a slight issue because Nyx is a champion that beats both Nara and Barik generally because she has cripples and she has percent-based damage on poison and she sustains very well. Once again, Terminus is there crying in the corner. At the moment, he's actually quite good. I'm not going to go into what makes Terminus good. He can be played very well. He's had a decent amount of buffs lately. Just no one quite knows how good he is at the moment. But once people start catching on and playing him in Terminus-dependent maps, then I think that would be quite interesting to see. But Terminus is actually quite good into most of this roster other than Nando. He kind of isn't particularly great against Fernando, but he's good against the rest. So when I say that there's a tank problem, there is an issue with Nyx. Now, Nyx breaks this trio up, and over the past however long, we've had tanks see buffs and changes to their kits, such as Nando, such as Nara becoming very strong a few months ago, back when she had Mother's Grace completely overtuned to hell. But when we say that the tanks are too strong, they're not too strong inherently. They are too strong into one another. So if we go back to this diagram, Nyx is too strong into Nara. Nara is too strong into Barik. Barik is a bit too strong into Nando. Nando is too strong into Nyx. So the tank matchup becomes very one-sided. They used to be counterplay. You used to be able to have some way to fight this. Let's say we go back to this. The Nara can build Wrecker to fight the Nando. She can rush the Wrecker and run sustain and just hope she can destroy his shield. If you had another DPS building Wrecker, then Nando would go down. Nando can fight Barik if you play the Nando well enough, shield enough of the damage, and you have enough consistent point pressure to kill the Barik. And Barik can play into the Nara if he plays safe enough and just doesn't really engage her and only really pushes in once the team has set up plays. But if we go back to what we have now, we have Nyx, who does an insane amount of poison that the Nara will just lose outright. Her cripple just destroys the barrack because poison damage then is just so consistent. And then you have Nando, who has been buffed so much that he now really destroys Nyx because of his flamethrower damage. The slow damage sort of burns through the Nyx poison because Nyx is very good at slowing down the pace of a game. But that doesn't matter to Nando because Nando's DPS is crap anyway. So Nando will just burn through the Nyx. He just slowly ticks, and he's very good at court application. So Nyx is very strong when she can take the damage onto her poison health, get out of court, and have it healed all back up. So she slows it down, but the Nando can apply the Cauterize well enough. There is some counterplay. The Nyx can build Rekka into the Nando. That's probably the only way the Nyx can even hope to win that fight. The Nyx has to build Rekka, but the Nando still has a significant advantage, as well as the recent buffs to his shield, which is now called Chivalry. So Chivalry is pretty strong now. So how did we get like this? So in my opinion, Evil Mojo doesn't quite understand tank. Now when I say Evil Mojo don't understand tank, I don't mean that they have no idea how the role works. They do. They have a generally good idea. Like, I think a lot of the direction they've been trying to take these tanks is good. And I don't think their design choices have been inherently bad. There are just a few things that I think they don't look into. They don't make that extra step forward when they're working out how to balance this. And I play a lot of tank. Tank is my preferred role. I played a lot of Inara. I have a lot of the tanks around level 50. And it's my preferred role. I've played a lot in scrims and in tournaments. I know a decent amount of tanks, so I feel comfortable saying this. And I've asked other people who also play this role what they think the issues with it are. So, tanks power creep has been severe into one another. So they're performing too well into their respective matchups. And this matchup, when I was saying how they perform too well into their matchup, I mentioned the Nando and the Nyx being buffed, and the barrack with tinkering now shredding Nando's shield. But even Evil Mojo's item store changes have been very impactful. Because changes to Unbound and the armor plating, Unbound and armor plating, Sentinel, arcane warding, these items have also really changed how it works. So tank is a lot about resources. You get cooldowns and resources used on you, and you have to use your cooldowns well. So Nyx, for example, is an inherently broken champion because poison is a resource that has too much value. Poison, as an ability, not only slows down the pace of the game, it does percent-based damage to your opponent, and it can be healed up. And it lasts for a long time. So you slow everything down. It's a very valuable resource, poison. So Nando's very good into that, but it's also incredibly impactful into the other tanks. So this leads us to our tanks performing too well into another. And we're just going to now look at how they play. Right now, let's look at Nyx. So Nyx, when she was first released, she ended up being played as an offtank. Now, this was because her rooted people for 3 or was it 4 seconds? Some insane amount. And she just did insane damage, and she just didn't die, and you built the right click up so quick, and the root just chained them for 3 seconds, and you just got the kill. Because Evil Mojo don't seem to quite understand what makes an off-tank and a point tank, and they've slowly forced and reworked Nyx by giving her a lot of passives and a lot of DR and whatnot to slowly force her into being a point tank. And yeah, it's finally worked. But once again, it's Evil Mojo not quite understanding what makes the tanks work as point tanks. And let's take their Nando change, for example. They buffed Nando in this patch to try and incorporate his playstyles. And I know it was a good change because we have Scorch and Formidable felt really bad because of how useful Aegis was. The toggling the shield is just such a useful ability. But when they buffed it and they put that into kit, everyone just played Scorch. Everyone just played Scorch, and it was ridiculous because Nando was outputting too much damage. and just sort of won every fight. So they tuned him back by nerfing his shield, which has sort of forced him that if you're going to play him point tank, you have to run Aegis. For example, now we're going to look at Torvald and Rekka. So this is a prime example of how items have led to a champion being a real issue for so long. So Torvald has just been messed up for as long as ever. He's been messed up for years. He's either been too weak or too strong. And this is because he's balanced around an item. So Torvald is a problematic tank because he's tied directly to Rekka. So Evil Mojo have tried to gut him over the years, but they haven't worked out why he's strong. He's strong because either Rekka's weak and he's strong, or Rekka's too strong and he's weak. He also has value with Nullify, but what he doesn't get value from, his main attraction is not shielding allies. But Evil Mojo seem to lean a little bit too hard into that. And, you know, they've nerfed Wind Dancer quite regularly, slowly gutting that card, and now they've further gutted Protection. Now, that's not what makes Torvald strong. Torvald will always be strong when Rekka is not good. When Rekka doesn't have enough potency, Torvald is strong because Nullify is very good at shutting down flanks. He has movement speed on recharge, and his personal shield allows him to have 2 lives because of recharge as an inherent ability. And that's why Rekka is an issue here. And now looking further into this itemization. These are the items that you generally buy on tank now. So back in the day, you didn't need to buy Sentinel and Unbound. You would generally buy Resilience, Rejuvenate, maybe Master Feeding, and maybe some DR, or maybe some Nimble. But with the breaking up of Resilience into Unbound and Sentinel, you leave tanks very vulnerable to crowd controls. And this is why Nara is very strong now. This is why Nara is performing too well into her matchup against Barak, because Cripple Nara is now what I think to be her meta point tank talent. The cripple value is so good because they've gutted Mother's Grace. So with the card that gives you DR on Watersfield, you can bring your DR when you're using the Obelisk up to what Mother's Grace gives you. And Mother's Grace then only gives you that DR, doesn't give you any bonus healing anymore, and only grants you the CC immunity. So you'd only really pick Mother's Grace for that CC immunity. So now you get Nara's running Cripple. And how do you stop Cripple? Well, you'd think you'd build Unbound for it, but you don't. You don't build Unbound for it because Cripple is a generally very toxic talent, and I think it should be removed. And this is coming from an Nara player who plays Cripple. I've been playing a lot of Cripple recently, just because it's so strong. But I think it's an inherently toxic talent. I think it's unfun. I think it should be removed. I think having a Cripple that is applied that doesn't have a set duration is problematic. Especially on a champion, because to escape Cripple, you need to buy Sentinel and Nimble. That's how you get out of the field, or you buy Bulldozer. The only problem with that is Nara's ult is a stun, and tanks take a lot of CC. So you need the Unbound as well. And let's say you're playing Barak, now you're having to dish out on 2 extra items with your 4 item slots. So then you can either buy Master Feeding and Rejuvenate. Those could be your 4 items, but then you're having to max 4 items to get your impact. You're not going to build any DR, you're not going to buy any Nimble, you're not going to buy any Rekka. Let's say they have a Cripple Nara and a Nando. You're going to really suffer because you've got no way to really get out. Let's say you're building the Sentinel, let's say you also take a very drastic approach. Let's say you take a very drastic approach to fighting the Nara. You're going to have to build Sentinel, Bulldozer, and Unbound and Nimble. That's your 4 items. That would be, and then you don't have enough for Rejuvenate, you don't have any slots. So breaking those items up has made Cripple Nara a very oppressive force, because Unbound used to really counter it. I would never really pick Cripple Nara because what they do is they build Unbound, and Unbound Resilience, as it was called back when, because I would never play Cripple because it would encourage resilience buys, and resilience would then deny my ultimate, and then the ultimate then loses its impact, and you're like basically losing two abilities. Um, so because of that, Nara is now performing too well. So this end result leads to tanks being just too much. Tanks are too strong. And when you take this into ranked with their matchups being so potent, what you can do is if you're smart with banning and you draft correctly, you can almost always get a winning draft if you're first pick. Because Nando is very strong at the moment. And when Nando is strong, Nyx becomes strong. And that sounds backwards almost. But it's not, because when the Nando is strong, the Nyx and Nando's banned all game, the Nyx then becomes meta because she defeats the other 2-point tank options. So the Nando's banned every game, and then Nyx becomes OP. Or Nando is too strong on point, and then let's say they then draft Barrack to counter your Nando, you then pull in Nara, and now because Nando's very good at off-tanking as well, you then put the Nara against the Barrack, and the Nara wins. So poor Barrack just sort of loses. So if you're drafting and you're clever with how you draft, you sort of win the game. The most effective way is just to remove Nando and pick Nyx, or remove Nando, remove Nyx and pick Nara, and your point fight is pretty much secured. Now Terminus is interesting. We're going to come back to him. Terminus here is interesting because Terminus can perform pretty well into the Nyx by stacking DR. You go the DR on Calamity Blast storage and you go Undying, and you just sort of sustain long enough because the Nyx will keep you poisoned and keep you within the Undying threshold. And he's pretty good to Nara because he just swings at her, because Nara doesn't really have any way to dodge him. He's not very good into Nando because the Nando can shield every swing and keep him cauterized. And Barrack, I'm not quite sure how that matchup goes. I'd say probably the Terminus. I'd say it's probably a fairly balanced matchup. Generally speaking, Terminus is actually what I would like, is the state that I would like these tanks to be in. Terminus has enough play into and out of these tanks. He doesn't have this same rock, paper, scissors matchup like the others do. So the end result is that drafts can really decide your outcome very potently if you lock these tanks, and often there's not a lot you can do. Let's say they have a Nyx, you have Nando banned, and they lock a Lilith. All they need to do is sit back and shred point. They just sit back and shred the objective. And that's basically it, because nothing you have can kill the Nyx. In fact, we have a terrific clip here when I'm playing Nyx and I have an IO and I press poison, and the insane value that poison has makes me just win this fight, because then I just sustains me through it. And I'm fighting so much on point, and I should not live this. I think the fact that I can live this is just proof that Nyx is a flawed champion design. So, is there anything we can do to solve this? My thoughts on this is a Nyx nerf. So Nyx needs poison damage tuned down. Center of combat should either be killed, you should gut the card, or you should rework it. I don't care what you rework it to. Maybe make the shield card useful on pulling presence, because that is a terrible card and it barely works. Or, no, sorry, not or. So once you've reworked or changed center of combat, then you need to make poison tick slightly quicker. Poison needs to make her she needs to die quicker when poison is activated. It needs to tick just a little bit, not too much, just enough, and that will bring her a bit more into line with the other tanks. She won't sustain them in the same way. And this is when we get to the interesting takes. So this is a bit more in depth. So we're going to need to buff Wrecker up to maybe 120% or 110. This sounds slightly extreme. I mean, it sounded quite extreme to me as well once I was thinking up the idea, because I thought, you play this and then Nando becomes useless on point. Barrack would become too strong into Nando here. Well, yes, that's true, but it would force the Nando to be played as an off-tank. You would see more Scorch and formidable plays, and I think then buff up his normal shield back to 4,500. I think buff that back up, let him play as an off tank. I think Nando as a point tank should only be good in specific situations. I think he should be a niche pick. I think you should pick him for the ultimate, and you should pick him when they don't have a good tank burner that can build the Wrecker. I think you should also then increase the price of Wrecker a bit, just to discourage it being stacked on the entire team. I think you see so many games where everyone is building Wrecker, and combine this with the Sentinel Unbound, making those one item would mean you'd have some more items in the shop. I like what Evil Mojo did with the item store. I think it's a neat idea. I think it's cool. I just think they didn't think a few things through to that extra level of thought. Because, for example, Ashe is a very obnoxious champion this patch because of the knockback and because of the stun. And BK in the similar sort of vein. Any champion that has both is now very frustrating to play against. So once you do this and you buff Wrecker up, you'll only get one person per team building Wrecker, and that will encourage other items to be bought. It will encourage a more diverse sort of level of play. And Nando will sort of be a niche pick because he won't be just being picked and botted on point. Because the fun way to play Nando is to use Fireball. I think everyone found this once Aegis got reworked and got put into base kit. Everyone was like, oh, this is so fun, and then they gutted him because he was performing too well as an offtank. I think trying to force champions onto point is not good. They did it with Nyx by giving her the percentage-based healing on point, which I think is fine. I don't mind one champion or two having that. That's okay, because Nyx, I think, works as a point tank now. But I think Nando should be a niche pick. You should either pick Nando if you're going to play into the Nyx. I think that should be the option. And when else, played as an off-tank. And then this, I think, would mean that you get less people buying Wrecker. Nando would have more fun. The Nando would be more aggressive. He would be pushing more. And I think that would be a better way to have him play. I think also, if you did want to play in point tank, I think the Aegis is, it is what it is. I think maybe you could look to its removal at some point. But he would have a decent early game because of the increase in Wrecker, but he would fall off quite hard late game, and I think that's fine. And this leads us into the next point here, which is making Cauterize scale faster. Now, this is a whole can of worms. I think it needs to build. I think when I say scale faster, I mean Cauterize needs to hit 90% slightly quicker than like 10 minutes, 12 minutes. I think it's too late. It takes too long for Cauterize to get up. But in a similar vein to the Wrecker buffs, it's this end game. So once champions become full built, once we reach an end game, once the final sort of caps are coming on, time to kill should be much quicker. You should be able to kill champions quicker. Being able to sustain on point is unhealthy. It's unhealthy because it teaches new players to play the game wrong. They see the tank walk to the objective and stand on the objective and then get healed through all the damage, even late game. With support creep, which is yet again another whole discussion, this sustained sort of meta where you just sit your tank on point and you run Lilith, Darmbo, or Grok and you just slap all the heals, or even Skye at the moment. Skye is another problematic character. It leads to the tank just sitting on point and them chucking heals at it. They don't understand the process of healing when people are out of Cauterize. It would force a different playstyle late game, and it would encourage support players to increase their skill. And I say this with the nicest way. I like to play a lot of support. I like playing support, but it encourages a support playstyle that is not very skillful, where you throw stuff at point. And support should be a skillful role. Support is a skillful role at high level. But at the sort of mid-level, it's really not, because you just sort of chuck stuff at the point. And the only real moment of mechanics where you are challenged is when you get flanked and you need to do something. So make support have to heal out of Cauterize. Late game. Early game is okay, because the game has progression, which is why it's a very cool game, which is why Paladins is great. The game has progression, which is an inherently cool concept and is executed less than optimally at the moment, which is unfortunate because it has such good potential there. And I think wait for players to learn that Terminus is good. Eventually, Terminus will catch on. People will start learning him. They'll learn what maps he's good on and what matchups and how to play him. And I think it will be good for, yeah, I think it's actually happening right now as well. But I think once that sort of comes up, that will be good. So I hope this was sort of some decent ideas. This is my pitch for Evil Mojo to hire me as a game designer so I can tell them how to balance their champions. That's a joke. I don't actually want to do that. But I've tried to make this as positive as possible because I think what Evil Mojo is trying to do, I think their design and their ideas for what they've been doing is good. I liked what they tried to do with the item store. I just think it's the few extra steps and the few extra thought processes that they're not taking. I think they need to listen to some more players about this. I think you need to have a group of players for each role. I believe that this should be the case. You should get, some master. You should get a group of players all the way from, I think, from Plat, because at Plat is where you start to understand a bit about the game, all the way to GM. You should get a few people from each rank on each role to sort of make, just who occasionally discuss stuff and can bring points like this to the devs, because it's fine if the devs don't have to be GM as long as they listen to the community. And I'm just hoping that this is a potential for that. So I just wanted to make this video because at the moment the tank rock paper scissors matchup is as obnoxious and possibly the worst it's ever been right now. So much that you almost can pretty much guarantee a win in the game by abusing this method. So that's why I wanted to make this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see other videos on a similar vein, I'm thinking about making a video about Nara and why Cripple should be removed from her kit. Soon, I'll probably do that. And yeah, thank you very much for watching.